Okay, good evening. Welcome to the Open Space Committee meeting on July 13th, 2015. I'm going to call the meeting to order at 7 o'clock. The first item on the agenda, under discussion items, is for our DPW representative from Parks and Cemetery Department.
He should be here.
He should be here coming, right?
Yep.
Did he know 7 o'clock?
Yes, I talked to him.
Okay. Well, the next thing I had after him was Mr. Anderson asked about a list of uses, which I put together as I was going through the minutes. I tried to list everything on the list of uses. Did everyone have an opportunity to take a look? Mm-hmm. Did I get everything?
I think so.
Yeah.
I can't actually, some of these I didn't even know about, but that's okay because I'm sure it was just something mentioned in passing. But yeah, it looks like a very comprehensive list.
Well, I'd gotten a couple of emails at home, from a couple of different people, and so I put them on, and then somebody I had run into said something to me about a hockey rink, so I threw it on, because I didn't want anyone to think that they were left out. So, well, Mr. Bloomquist is here, so...
Right, go to him.
Yeah. Good evening. Since Mr. Bloomquist is here, why don't we ask you can you join us at the table? Does everyone know Graham Bloomquist?
Not really.
He's from the
Seen him on TV a lot.
superintendent of the Parks and Cemeteries?
Cemetery, Parks, and Recreation.
Okay. Sorry, I get the...
That's okay.
confused. So anyways, thank you for coming today. I know it was kind of short notice, but
It's okay.
we've been trying to talk to folks about some of the different uses that we've had, and I think Mr. Benoit was kind enough to send you our list of uses that we were just talking about before you came in. We were just kind of looking at it, and I guess Mr. Anderson, my board member here to my left, had asked about a list, and we realized that there's going to be maintenance involved with a lot of these uses, the municipal uses. So I think we're trying to get some idea from your perspective as to how much time might be involved and how much work. And I specifically, since you're in charge of cemeteries, there's been a few people that have suggested that we might want to utilize some of that property for a cemetery. And I was wondering if you had any thoughts about that.
Well, I think that it would be a good idea to have cemetery in the background of thought, because we probably have another 25 years, and after that, planning ahead, you'd have to have land or space set aside for a cemetery eventually, because
so you think
it's
there's about
inevitable.
25 years left in Hillside?
Correct.
Okay. So eventually...
That's an approximate amount
Yeah.
of time.
Yeah.
But, because we've had different people mapping it and so forth, and they said, on the average, it'd be about 25 years.
Okay.
But, it won't affect me probably, because I'll probably be there, but I think that, looking for the future, you have to plan ahead and at least set something aside somewhere.
Has your department given consideration to other locations for cemeteries?
Well, we had looked at the Proudy land, and
What's the story with
there
that?
was a situation there that they said it was too much wetlands, but I had tried to sell the columbariums or mausoleum type structures that could have been built, but it was turned down. So yeah, we're open for thoughts or suggestions on possibly up that direction, but
Well, the water table's pretty high up there on Packagug Hill and that property up there. And I was just kind of wondering, do you have any concerns about that? Or do you even explore that yet? Or is that not a to me,
well,
it's a
it would
consideration,
have to
but-
be looked at, we'd have to do some kind of soil sampling or whatever anyways, but because we couldn't have a cemetery on ledge or anything like that either, so.
Right. Is there a typical soil type that makes a difference? Does it matter if it's loam or sand or?
No, it doesn't, it's not a
Gravel?
big factor in that.
Okay.
It's just,
You don't
you
want
wouldn't want to
ledge
be in a swamp and you wouldn't want to be on
Right.
ledge,
Right.
it's something like that. Hillside has been the perfect cemetery because it's all pure sand and gravel,
Gravel, yeah.
so we've lucked out on that. I know some cemeteries have a tough time, they're practically in a swamp, but we've been very lucky. You do have to kind of think to the future, though. I know, like, even Charlton has 13 cemeteries, and I know we have the 4, but we only have the 1 active cemetery.
Right. This is it.
So you have to keep that in the back of your mind.
So there is no more room in the other 3? The other 3 are
Correct.
full?
Right.
So what do you think about some of the other uses that are on the list here? Bearing in mind, some of them are not municipal uses, but on the ones that are municipal, like a dog park, for example.
Mhm.
What
No, I
do you
think that's a,
What do you think about?
I've had many people come up to me asking about a dog park. I think that it probably would be a good idea to have a specified area for a dog park because I know a lot of the other fields, they bring their dogs and some of them try to let them loose and everything else, so there's no control. But if you had a specified area, as the town grows with more people and dogs and so forth, you'd have a confined area for them.
Well, given some of the things that are on the list here, do you have concerns about how much time your staff would have to put in up there for maintenance? I mean, I wanted to ask you too about just the maintenance of the meadow in general right now. What you're thinking about when and how much time's involved in cutting that.
Yeah, well, I think that anything that you do to develop or whatever is going to cost money anyways. You have to kind of think about that in the back of your mind. I mean, we took over the Veterans Corridor because it was supposed to be taken care of by the different businesses that promised they would take care of them. Well,
Yeah, the lawn services.
it kind of fell through, so we had to take it over. So this takes us from other jobs that we have to do, so we just kind of accept the work and responsibility, and to become a breaking point someday, so that's why we just have to add more help, but again, that costs money. And then there'll be more equipment and so forth. I mean, like, for example, we have a John Deere tractor. It's an oversized lawn tractor, practically, that we attached a brush hog to it.
Yeah.
And we're mowing the fields up there on the property that was just purchased. Well,
Oh,
it's
you started doing that?
yes, we
That's
started
what I was
doing that.
wondering.
And it's already broke down.
Oh, no.
So, I mean, this is another expense, so that in the future we
What
may
do you
have
call it, a
to...
brush hog?
A brush hog.
Brush hog.
It's a flail where it cuts all the... You've seen them on farms.
Yep.
And,
Is it because the brush is it's too thick, it's too intense over there already?
no, it's just that it's the equipment. It's a big brush hog, and it's like an oversized lawn tractor. You don't take it out to do farm work and expect, heavy-duty work out of it. So that's why I said, eventually we'll probably have to go into a bigger equipment, and is another expense. So that's why I
So-
say, anything that is done ends up costing money, or anybody's...
I just want to understand, because I don't want to have any misunderstanding. Are you saying that the equipment that you currently have is not sufficient to cut the meadow up there?
Oh,
on South
it will cut the meadow.
Road? Right, but it's not heavy duty?
It's not as heavy duty as it should be.
Okay.
I mean, when Hillcrest people were mowing it, they used bigger equipment
Yeah,
than what we're using. It's not saying we can't do it, it's just saying that, you don't take a Volkswagen and put a 1 ton of dirt in the back of it and expect
No,
to haul
I
it.
get your point. I do.
At the same time, the equipment, you're also going over this field for the first time, and
Right.
you're learning it too,
Right.
and so is the machine.
Right.
Roughly how long, through the chair, roughly how long you guys working on it to the point where the machine,
We worked on it for 2 days,
Yeah.
and,
So how far did you get in cutting?
well, see, it's not saying that it was necessarily the field or the problem with it. It was, it was a tie rod end that broke, which could have broken anyways on any equipment,
Yep.
but it's a heavy-duty work for a smaller
For a small piece of
equipment,
equipment. Right, it
that's all.
wasn't designed for that, really.
Right,
Now, I know that Mr. Post mowed that twice a year.
right.
First time in April and second time in July.
Uh-huh.
Now, do you think, I know hindsight's 20/20, but it would seem to me that it would have been less to cut if we'd cut it before. I know hindsight's 20/20, but It grew up a lot. I
It
was
would have
there a
been,
week ago.
it would have been less to
Yeah.
cut, but
more time.
it's been a wet season too, so there's all kinds of factors involved.
Are you allowed to burn those fields at all?
No,
No.
Especially not this time of year.
no.
So what do you think about repair? What's the repair?
Well,
Right,
it's being, the part is being ordered now, so it's being repaired, so they'll be back at mowing again, in a couple of days,
Couple of days?
sure. But see,
I hope that same thing doesn't happen again.
oh no, it probably won't, but you never know with equipment. I think that also, it's like a situation of my men are out, one of the guys is out mowing the field there. Well, it's taken from his other work too, so, that's an expense. Well,
Sure.
these are things that everybody doesn't see, so I'm just bringing it to everybody's attention.
yeah, where would they have gone had they not gone to Southhold? They probably would have been working on one of the fields.
Well, they would have been working on one of our many fields that we
Yeah.
take care of,
Right.
our baseball fields and all that.
It's prolonging the schedule by working on Southhold
Right.
of the routine fields.
Well, I have park benches that have to be installed. I have playground mulch to put out. I have almost $3,000 worth of mulch to be put on the Veterans Corridor. I have infield mix that has to go out at Lemansky and a couple of the other fields. So these are the things that are being held up.
Do you have summer interns, like, high school kids that
We have
employ any high school
4 summer help,
You do?
and we lost one already, so we only have 3.
So, I would assume, no, I don't like to assume anything, but...
I'm not trying to be
it's-
negative.
No, I know, but...
I'm not trying to be
And I want
neg-
to tell you too, something. Some of us did bring this to the attention, we did make this
The
known
select
about
board.
the maintenance, yeah.
Uh-huh.
And that's why, I understand your point, I do, I get it.
Uh,
But it wasn't as though nobody spoke up and said, there's going to be maintenance needed there.
Right.
I know I was one of them.
Uh,
But, so it basically, anything that's up there, whether it's a, what did you call that, disc golf?
Oh, someone brought that up last meeting, yeah. disc
Right,
golf.
something like that. Now, that requires maintenance too, right?
Sure.
And that's a specialized maintenance, isn't it? Didn't you say?
It's, no,
Would it-
not really more than its current maintenance, because you're just putting in a couple of cages with frisbees. That's one idea that we
Right.
heard, but that's
But
not-
that's still something that would require some maintenance.
Sure.
So basically, anything that's on this list would require
Oh,
parks maintenance,
For
correct?
municipal use, certainly. And I
Right.
guess it kind of begs the question through Madam Chair. Project of this size, if you were to add this to the current workload, 50-acre parcel, pretty big.
right.
How many, I'm not going to ask you how many acres you're working on now, but I'm sure 50 is a pretty sizable contribution to that.
Well, it normally took 3 of us to work at the cemetery, which is 30 acres, with like 5,000 headstones to trim around and mow, and graves to dig and funerals to plan and so forth. And now it's down to 2, and I try to help out in between with all the departments wherever I can. But when you're shorthanded, you kind of stretch yourself. And
Right.
many people have said, how come you're out working? And I said, because
Because
we're short labor.
Yeah.
So we all try to work together as a team.
Now, how many staff do you have besides the summer help?
Well, there's 3 in the Parks Department and 2 in the cemetery,
Okay. And they're full-time?
and they're full-time.
Now, do you folks, I know you cut those lawns at the library.
Yep. Got the
Do you-
libraries.
And the town hall, right?
Town hall, fire station, and
Municipal building.
any
But
of
do you
the
do the school
municipal.
buildings too? Do you do the lawns at the schools?
Oh, yeah, at all the schools we take care of. All the islands you find around town, any of the parks, you know, like Spongin Square or any of those little
Yep,
islands, we take care of all those.
okay.
So we have plenty of areas to maintain.
So, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but had the piece of equipment not broken down, do you have any idea what you're looking at for number of hours it would take to cut that site? the metal?
Probably 4 or 5 days.
4 or 5 days?
Yeah.
And that would be one person working there all day?
Right. You know, as they do it, you know, get used to the
Yeah.
area, you know, they might cut it down a little bit, but,
Right. That's a lot of space.
I don't know
Oh,
where the
it's-
rocks are now.
yeah.
Yeah.
But, you know, not being familiar with the terrain
Right.
too, takes time.
Yeah.
But,
So roughly 40 hours then for one person?
yeah.
Okay. So I would say any of these municipal uses requiring maintenance would
I would
be
say most of them would,
40 or less,
yeah.
because some of these things wouldn't, I mean, once you developed it, it
Right,
was getting pretty dense in there a week or so ago. You know, that used to be forest land,
right.
and then it was converted to pasture land,
Mhm.
and it wouldn't take long for it
Oh,
to revert
no,
back to what it
no,
was.
it wouldn't take long at all. Right,
And that's my concern, because, you know, the more intense the vegetation becomes there, it's going to be more difficult and more labor-intensive
Mhm.
to cut it, you know?
right.
Once it becomes treed, we'll probably never use it for anything.
How long do you think it would take to go back to its natural?
I don't think very long. I bet you within 5 years it would be forested again.
Oh, probably.
Not even, maybe.
No, you have to keep trimming it all the time.
Yep.
If
So
you want
even if it was used for open space, there is a certain amount of upkeep that is required.
Oh, sure,
Right.
sure, unless you want to turn it back into woodland.
Woodland, yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think, Wayne, seeing the site, Madam Chair, through the chair, how many times do you think maintenance would be required if they were to keep the field as is, for a couple times a year, if not 2 to 3, spring
say-
season before the
I would say
freeze?
2 or 3 times a year would probably be okay.
That's 2 to 3 weeks of,
But it depends on what kind of, what you're looking for. If you're looking for it down to lawn,
right.
you know, then it would require a lot more maintenance than, you know, just keeping it 6 inches deep,
Right.
so to speak.
But you need some heavy equipment.
Well, what you have to do is you'd have to train it so that, you know, cut the brush down, then come and then cut it a little bit lower each time till you get it down to the grass level.
Do you have any idea what you said that the piece of equipment we have isn't really intended for heavy-duty use? So
Well,
if
not
we
that-
bought something bigger, do you have any idea what we're looking at for money?
Oh, probably around 75,000 or
75,000?
in that category.
Would it be better to contract that service out?
It's what?
Would it be better to contract that service out, the cutting?
It could, it's a good possibility.
Maybe worth investigating, because
3 times a year or twice a year?
Yeah,
Especially if that was the only place we ended up using the equipment,
right.
you know?
wouldn't put the wear and tear on our own.
I'm sorry. I didn't-
Sorry, I wouldn't put the wear and tear on our own equipment
Right.
Right.
contract.
That's my fear is, you know, after you get this piece fixed, is it gonna just break again? You know?
No, that's a good possibility to subcontract it.
Well,
But you
depending-
still need a budget for that.
Sure.
Oh,
Right.
definitely, definitely.
And who knows what they, you know, I have no clue what they would charge either to do
Yeah.
something like that.
I'd have to get prices.
Are there any of the municipal uses that are listed, are there any that you don't think that you could maintain? Is there anything that's something that you don't, I mean, they're pretty straightforward things, but,
Yeah.
Well, speaking, just, I don't mean to interject, but wouldn't a solar farm, if we're done beyond, privately, they would have
That
to
would be
maintain their
kind
own.
of- Right.
That would probably be the trickiest on the
private
list,
one, yeah.
if we had to do it. But that's just my opinion.
Expansion of the Packagug Golf Course
I was
would be
gonna
under
say-
their budget,
That
right?
would
I was
be
gonna say
huge.
that would be another
Right.
yeah.
somewhat tricky, because you'd have to have probably a little more experience than we have to set up a golf course.
Well, that would be under the Packagug budget itself, right?
Right.
It's a separate group of people.
Right.
Right, because
Right now.
your department doesn't do any of the maintenance at Packagug Golf Course, do you?
No.
No.
And I would think that if they expanded it, if they, you know, like now it's under a private management company, so it probably would be,
Until the end of the year.
right, until the next contract. But other than those two things, it's pretty straightforward.
Okay. May I have a question through the chair, please?
Yep.
Do you have any ideas of your own that you would like to see happen at that property?
I always like open space myself, but,
Now, what do you envision as open space? Let it grow up to forest again, or just
no,
leave it as
I would
it
say
is?
just maintain as
maintain
it
it
is.
as it is?
Maintain it as a meadow.
Correct. And kind of maybe set a little bit aside as for possibly a cemetery in case for future. I don't know.
How many acres would you think? And we have 49 point something. How big is Hillside?
Hillside is approximately 30 acres.
30? That's right, you did say that before. You've had that for a long time.
Yeah. I believe it was like 1843 in one of the
Wow.
first burials.
Really?
I didn't realize it was that old.
Yeah.
Wow.
But you still have to think ahead, you know, it doesn't have to be used today, it doesn't have to be used next
Right.
week, but
Mhm.
But cremation seems to be getting more and more popular too, so as time goes by, we might need a little less room.
right.
I see there is a columbarium at Hillside, suddenly showed up the other day when I drove through and I looked and, oh,
Yeah, we finally got the columbarium installed.
so how many units in that?
There's 48 units, which can hold 96,
96
Urns.
units, wow, okay.
so that we're starting with that and see how it works out.
Do you gentlemen have any questions, comments, concerns? No?
I guess, I mean, I introduced the idea of the cemetery, not my idea, but something that's
Yeah.
out there. And by my calculations, Hillside will last, those 30 acres will have lasted about 100 years by the time it's filled up.
It's
And,
more than that, 1843.
well, I'm saying by the time,
The new section.
I'm sorry, 200 years.
200.
Yeah.
Sorry, my math was off. And that's pretty impressive for 30 acres.
Yeah.
So, even to take like 10 acres and think about it, it doesn't have to be committed to it now, but we need to have this in our head, because we're going to either be out of the cemetery business, which is one possibility for the town, or we need to have the space for it. And it might not be there, but it's sure not going to be up on Prospect Hill with all the ledge that's there, correct?
Right.
So we need to think about an area that's suitable possibly for graves and also for a mausoleum possibly, or something that uses land much more efficiently. So that I don't necessarily say that we need to commit that to this time, but no matter what, that's a municipal
Use.
municipal use.
Right.
And that's important to realize.
Right.
And even if it was allocated for cemetery use in the future, you could use it for something else now.
Correct.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I had suggested when we were looking into the Proudy property that part of it could be used for a baseball field or a soccer field or whatever, and give some of the other fields a rest, until we decided to expand to it, as a suggestion.
What happened with that?
Well,
Yeah.
it was turned down, so.
Do you know if anything's gonna happen to Proudy land? Is it still for sale or what, do you know?
The Robichaud family purchased it. They live next door to it.
Yep.
One last question. Have you identified any other property in town that might be appropriate for a cemetery?
No, we have not.
You have not. Have you done a search or anything, or?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
It was just an open suggestion as a possible spot.
Well, the Proudy property abuts Hillside, doesn't it?
Correct. It
So-
abuts Hillside, so I thought it was going to be a perfect match because we wouldn't have to build a new office building, we wouldn't have to build a new garage, we wouldn't,
Oh,
Whereas-
it would be right there.
it would all be right there. But if we expand it to a different location, we can do it, but it would take time to go from our garage up to, like, say, Packagug Hill or whatever. Or if you had an office at Hillside and you're working up at Packagug Hill, it's like going next door instead of being on the property.
And that means either you transport equipment from Hillside to the new site,
Right.
or you have two of everything,
Right.
which is adding to your
Oh, yeah.
In which case you
Expenses.
could build another
cost.
garage, yeah.
Right,
Right,
right. That's another garage, another office, another
right.
everything.
And it'd be more expensive because you'd have to have sprinklers and everything else in the if you put in a new building.
As Hillside stands right now, there is no land to expand it to, is there?
No. No,
The Proudy property has been sold,
right.
so
So that's it,
that's it. There isn't anything else.
right.
All right. Does anyone else have anything? Is there any public comment, any questions of Mr. Bloomquist? Yes, Ms. Page.
I just got a quick one, Wayne. You're talking about the machine that broke when you left your house on South Hill Road.
Uh-huh.
Now, is that a machine that's used basically every day through other jobs too?
Right.
Okay, so it's not just...
It's
It
the,
wasn't because of South Hill Road that it broke?
oh, no,
It's
no.
Wear
No,
and tear from all...
it's wear and tear from everything.
It just happened to be
It's-
there.
It just
The
happened to
tie
be,
rod broke,
it just happened to be up there that it
Right.
broke down.
probably because it was so
It's-
labor intensive.
It's the, you probably remember the Parks John Deere tractor they use?
Yep.
It was that one. And see, they put the big, I believe it's 5-foot brush hog on it, on the back of it. And,
Now, you think-
it makes extra work on it.
Like you're saying, that once you get it cut down, you keep maintaining it,
Right.
Even so, even if you've got a bigger machine, you could have the same problem that you have with the machine that you have.
Oh,
It
yeah.
could do breakdown.
Oh, it could be anything,
That, as you're paying
That's-
$75,000.
right.
But if you keep up with it, you would probably have less damage other than doing all the other fields that
Well,
you're
this,
doing too.
this particular repair was wear and tear anyways.
Right.
It would just happen to break down at the site. But I was just saying, it's not helping the situation with heavy-duty equipment on the back of this little tractor.
Right. Thank you.
Can I ask one last question?
Yes, sir.
When you, how did you get your equipment down into the meadow? Is there a easy hill to go down, or how do you do it?
Yeah, they just went down
Down Curtis
off
Street?
the road, you know, where it's, becomes dirt.
Yep.
Then they kind of work down off the road.
Okay.
Does anyone else have any questions or comments? Okay. Well, Mr. Bloomquist, I'd really like to thank you very much for spending some of your evening with us. It was very
Thank you.
informative.
Well, I hope I was able to help with few questions.
No, I
don't know.
appreciate that because, you know, we don't...
And I didn't mean to sound negative about everything, it's just I wanted everybody to know that
Right. No, I'd
there's
rather
labor
know-
involved with
Sure.
everything.
Yes.
Of course.
And at least this way we have some clue as to, I mean, it would seem to me that keeping it maintained as a field is probably the most labor intensive,
Uh-huh.
you know, other than expanding the golf course, but you wouldn't be doing that anyway,
Right.
so. But
I mean, I
anyways,
would like a lot of these things, but again, everything you like costs.
Oh, I know, money, money, money.
Yeah.
But anyways, again, thank you so much for your time.
Okay,
Really appreciate
Thank
you
you.
coming in.
thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Good night now.
And you're welcome to stay, it's just that I didn't, you know, want you to have to stick around. All right, so getting back to our list here, John, you had talked about the last meeting, I think it was your intent to try to narrow down some of the things on this list. So, I guess I'm going to talk about that and see what your thoughts were.
Some of the passive recreation stuff that's on here, I think are just excellent uses for that space. Walking, hiking trails, biking trails, even a dog park. I don't have a problem with any of those. I think that when, as I mentioned last meeting, recreation athletics fields get into an issue of access
Yeah,
and cars.
and parking, yeah.
Parking. I think the same thing if you had a community farm share, you can have traffic coming in and out. But the town common, I'm not quite sure what that is, but.
Well, that's really, if someone
I know.
had emailed me
Yeah.
that, and I mean, it's a great idea, but I don't think it fits there.
No, just, it's like,
I put it on the list
you know,
because somebody brought
just
it
an
up.
uncommon place to have a town common.
Yes, you're correct.
I think Central Street would be that.
Right.
Horse stables, that sounds like a private venture versus a municipal venture. Hockey rink, we already have one in town, I don't know why we need two. Town pool, again, great idea, but we're talking traffic. And even with senior housing, we're talking a traffic issue there. And I personally think that we need to be aware of the uproar that happened last fall when this property first came up. And a lot of it was because of the use of the land and potential traffic, primarily going along Curtis Street, no matter what. And I just can't support something that is going to impact negatively on that neighborhood. I mean, they've taken a bit of a hit with the Pappas Recreation Complex because it's right next door and it, you know, there's lights on at night, there's kids up there and, you know, playing, and those are all great things, but when you're living next door to it, I think it can be a bit of an issue. So I like to think about things that are more individually oriented. You know, if you have a walking trail and two people go there, I think that's great. Or a bike trail. Even if the Boy Scouts go there with a troop of boys and want to, you know, do a service project or something, the impact on the neighborhood is relatively low. And I personally think that's something we should strive for. And of course, this being the Open Space Committee, I will say that I'm really in favor of open space. And that doesn't mean neglected, land. It means land that might be managed for the public good. And then there are numerous things on here that could fit into that. I'm not sure if you're looking for something more than that, Ann.
No, I wanted to have a dialogue about it.
Okay.
And I think that's a good place to start. Does anyone have any comments on that? Committee members?
You know, from my point of view, walking trails are fine, bikes, trails, I could consider that, but there's a cost involved with that. It's a little more involved with putting a roadway in there. Senior housing, I think, is a better places in town for that. Recreational fields have got, my opinion, plenty right now. Packagug Golf Course, I think, is inappropriate. Solar farm, I don't know the costs are involved with that or the cost benefit on that, but so I would question that. Dog park, it's a good thought, but there is a substantial cost and a traffic issue with that. There are a lot of dog owners in the town, and they would be going to the dog park, and that's almost as bad as putting another athletic field in there. Community farm, traffic issues, cemetery, that's I think it's a legitimate dual-use suggestion. Doesn't have to be used now, but can be used in the future after the existing cemetery used up. Town common, I think it's inappropriate. Keep open space forever, it's not a bad idea. Certainly the town, unless it's going to be annexed by Worcester in the next 50 years, there are not going to be any additional open spaces, and if you can maintain it in a meadow type of environment, I'm sure there'd be plenty of people coming on this board in years to come that would dream up legitimate uses for the land. Horse stables, probably better private. Hockey rink, as John said, that we've already got one. A town pool, you know, the access of water, they might be able to do something in existing waterways in town in the future. Disc golf, that follows in with the walking and hiking trails, and then the solar farm is the other comment with the solar farm. So those are my thoughts. I think that it would be a good idea to reduce this and then maybe come to some sort of final agreement or a recommendation in subsequent meetings that we have.
Okay, I just want to pass on a couple comments, and then I ask Mark and Louise what they thought, but relative to the hockey rink, I put that on there because someone approached me about that. And it's a person who lives in Auburn who's involved in hockey, and he has a child that plays hockey. So he's very, very knowledgeable about the sport and the services that are needed. And the reason why he had brought it up to me was because apparently there are an awful lot of kids that play hockey in Auburn, and Horgan is not open. They have no ice time in the summertime. So apparently everybody has to go to, there's a rink in Worcester, and there's another one in, I think it's Marlboro, that are open in the summertime for ice. And they charge like $250 an hour for ice time. Plus they got to travel there, and it's booked up all the time. And I'm not real sure why Horgan doesn't have ice time in the summertime.
It costs too much to keep the open.
But
Very
he,
expensive.
this person that had approached me, because he's someone that's involved in that sport, he feels that, yes, we have Horgan, but he thinks that because there's such a high utilization of hockey time here, and that there's no availability in the summer, he thought that it could be a viable thing. And I can't even imagine what a hockey rink would cost, and think about the traffic of that.
It's probably the most expensive thing on this list.
Yeah. So then you're buying you're going to buy that
Other than the
Zamboni
golf
thing,
course.
and you got to hire people to maintain it, and
I think
Access in
that's
and out.
essentially why Horgan's not open in the summer, is that the maintenance costs are very high to do that. And having attended a couple events at Horgan, non-ice events this summer, I asked, hey, why don't you guys have ice? And they said, well, they told us we couldn't do it before, and now we have all these events booked. And so it's become a venue in the summer for non-ice events, which
Because
is,
they never did ice in the summer.
because they never did ice in the summer before. So now they have the conflict of having, people that are used to using the space that would be kicked out, for the use of ice. On the other hand, that's their problem, they need to solve it, and not our problem. The one thing I would say about hockey is that, and I have a lot of respect for the coaches and kids that do this sport, because when my neighbor played, his ice time was usually 5 o'clock or 4:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine the parade of cars going down Curtis Street every single day to get to a hockey rink, okay? And, again, this all changes if there was an alternative entrance in there, but so far, none have been identified.
Right.
And I think that any high traffic, number of people using that area is really limited by the way in and out, and it's not very good right now.
Who currently owns Oregon? State or
State.
town? State.
It's the state.
And who maintains it? The state?
They have a private contractor in there that does
Okay.
that runs it.
Maintenance? Okay.
Yeah, the gentleman that approached me told me the name of the contractor, but I forget. It's somebody that's well-known, I guess, in the industry. They do this one and they do Worcester as well.
Yeah.
But I don't know a whole lot about the sport. I had no idea that there was no ice in Oregon in the summertime.
I didn't know that until
know.
recently. I was actually a little bit surprised.
Yeah,
But, again, that's the type of thing that has to be dealt with by the people that are in charge and the people that use those facilities. They need to pressure it to maybe keep ice there all year.
yeah,
If there's a demand, then
right. If there's enough demand that would justify it, then I would think.
for
that
what they
would do
charge
it.
for ice time, it's not like it's a losing proposition.
Right. All right. Mark, did you have any comments on the uses?
Oh, a lot of them are expensive, like a pool and other stuff. Maybe just leave open space, just don't. I didn't think we had to make a decision what we're gonna do with it. Was it just more the money part?
I'm sorry, what was that?
I thought we had more, we didn't have to make a decision what we're gonna do with the site.
We have to decide if we're going to recommend to the selectmen. We have 2 weeks. If we're going to recommend to the selectmen to keep it off of municipal use, or are we going to suggest keeping part of it for something else? And we have to tell them although we don't have to give them definitive plans, we have to tell them what the something else would be, because they have to have a real estate appraiser come in and establish a value depending on the type of use.
So how would you determine how many acres would be for something else?
Well, that's what we're supposed to be
Right.
trying to figure out.
And through the chair, the third option is to request the ban or extend the decision out for 1 year, or 2 years for that
Or
matter.
2 years.
Right.
We could tell them to keep it off of municipal use and sit there and do nothing for 10 years,
Except cutting.
right. But they would still be able to do like the trails and stuff. They'd be able to do the municipal uses like that sort of thing. But, you wouldn't be able to do anything else. I tried to write my paragraph in there about the bonding because tried to listen very carefully to what Mr. Casanova said about the bonding. If you do the 10-year bond, and you said keep it off of municipal use, then it's a non-taxable bond. Bonds cannot be paid off early, but most bonds have a callable provision, which means that in year 8 of that 10-year term, you could exercise that callable provision, and you can convert it at that time, but he didn't recommend that because he said it was very, very expensive to do that, to exercise that callable provision. So in essence, you're looking at nothing happening for 10 years, really, except hopefully cutting it. Because otherwise, in 10 years, you're not going to be able to do anything,
I think it's important to understand that on this list, we have 15 items. 12 of them are municipal use. And any of those 12 municipal uses could be, carried forward if it's bonded municipally, okay? In fact, the only ones that probably don't fit, and senior housing is still questionable, and it depends on the circumstances, right?
Exactly, right. Mhm.
But that's a questionable. Solar farm, most likely that would be a private development because the town's not in that business. The horse stables, again, the town could be in that business, but it's a new venture, and we'd have to add people to do it. But other than those three, everything on here is municipal. I mean, with even Packaghaw Golf Course, their contract is up at I think
This
it's the
year.
end of this year. And so there's been talk of whether or not the town is going to take that over
Right, or
or going to put it out to
contract
bid
or not.
again. So, even if the town took that over and expanded the golf course, or even if they had it with a private management company, it's still a municipal use. And I think that, based on that, and this is my opinion, we're paying a lot of money for this property, a lot more than I think we should have. But we're stuck with that, and I think the town should finance it at the lowest rate they can get for whatever the appropriate time is. And get it paid for, to sit there for maybe 8 years and not do any private development, I'm fine with that.
Just maintain it, right?
We'll maintain it, we could build trails there, we can do, we can do a whole slew of things in there if it's appropriate. But I think that in the interest of the town finances, and this is an opinion, this is not a open space comment, I'd like to see it financed now when the interest rates are lower, because the predictions are they're going to be going up for municipal bonds. And if I'm wrong on that, then they should tell us otherwise.
Just a comment on the solar farms, from what I've heard from the town manager and from the Alternative Energy Committee, solar farms seem to have saturated the market with solar farms. And I guess the utilities, the credits that they used to have for those, they're not there anymore, they're gone. So I don't know, I don't really know, to tell you the truth, if there would be a lot of interest in solar farms there. I mean, it's a great idea, but I think maybe we missed the opportunity, too much time.
I agree with you there, yeah, absolutely.
You know,
I mean, it sounds like a great idea, but there are so many of them out there, and, there's only, as far as I'm concerned, if we generated all our electricity with solar farms, that would be great, but there's a limit to what we can get other people to pay for.
Louise, what's your thoughts?
Well, I agree with many of the things that have been said here. As far as recommending to the Board of Selectmen, I've had two thoughts. One was set aside a certain amount for municipal, like do a ratio of maybe 30% for municipal, 70% open space, or whatever makes more sense, or leave it for a year and give us and the selectmen more time to decide if there's something specific that they want to do with it and actually know what will go in there. But we don't have to decide what is going in there, we just need to decide how much of it we want to keep for open space and how much of it is going to go for municipal. So if we get some kind of an idea of what we think might work, just set aside that amount.
Well, actually, open space would be considered a municipal use,
So,
How would you identify that extension? By what name? You would say defray the decision? Or defer the decision
No,
for a year?
which one are we talking about? The 10 years? The 2
No,
years?
the
1
2 year, the 1 or 2 year extension of the decision or recommendation. What would you call that?
As I understand it, he referred to it as rolling over the existing bond.
Right. It's called a
And
request
that
to
would cost,
abandon.
he had said, we talked about it for a
Right.
1 year period,
Right.
and he said 28 to 42,000 depending on the
Correct.
interest
Right.
rate.
Correct.
So, if you try to do it for 2 years, I'm thinking you'd Or at least
double.
double it, right?
It could change depending on the interest rate at that time after the first year.
Right.
Could be more, could be less.
But what we would be doing is only extending for a year or two our recommendation of the use of the land.
Right.
Right.
And you gotta remember too, that we're only an advisory committee.
Right,
You
absolutely.
know, we could tell them to sit on it for 10 years,
Right,
and they could say, nope, we're gonna sell it tomorrow,
that's right.
you know? So, I mean, we could be driving ourselves crazy for nothing.
So that particular thought would be entitled what? Extension, 1 or 2 year extension?
Yeah, a rollover of the existing debt.
Yeah,
Or-
request
So
to be
when we
had for 1 or
come
2
to
years.
vote on that, that'll be that, right?
Correct.
So we know what we're talking about?
Yep.
Yeah, I just was thinking here, as I was listening to you all talking about splitting it up. If you tell the selectmen, or if you recommend to the selectmen that they keep all of it for municipal use, you gotta remember, now, I don't know how you all define open space, but in my mind, open space would be leaving it in its natural state, keeping it maintained as a meadow. That's my idea of open space.
Yes, mine too.
Now, if you told the selectmen, and this is my feeling, if we recommended to them that we keep all 49 point something acres for municipal use, right? There's no guarantee, of course, we're only advisory, but if you told them all for municipal use, there's no guarantee that they're gonna keep 1 acre in its natural state. So, if you're gonna ask for them to consider waiting 10 years, I'd like to see us say, at least recommend, a certain percentage of it, as Mrs. Downey said, for true open space, keeping it natural. If you want to recommend a piece of it from other municipal uses, like your passive recreation uses, splitting it up that way. I mean, because it doesn't sound like the majority of the committee, and correct me if I'm wrong, it doesn't sound like the majority of the committee wants to do any non-municipal uses. Am I right or am I wrong?
That's how I feel.
Just
I
leave
second
open-
that, yeah.
Just leave open space.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes.
But I think you all have vocalized the idea that you like to keep some open space. Am I right?
If
Yes.
not all.
Right. So open space outside of development of a ball field or a trail or a dog park. You all felt that you'd like to keep some of it as open space in its natural state.
Yes.
Is that true? Mr. Anderson said he agreed. Do you? You agree?
Yeah.
And Mark, do you agree?
Yeah, to keep open space, to always have open space, don't put anything on the site.
Right. So, and I just want to point out too is, we're only at the beginning of our road of looking at the town-owned open spaces. And I think respectfully, any land we look at, the neighborhood is going to be arguing traffic. I don't think we can keep, $3 million is a lot of money for 49 acres of land. And I mean, would we have bought that if, somebody hadn't threatened a 40B subdivision in there? Probably not.
Not for that money.
No,
We would
it's
never
too-
spend $3 million
No.
for open space. So let's be honest here.
It's to be on the market.
What is the market for 49 acres?
I don't know.
It's gotta be at least $10,000 an acre, right?
I don't know what the going rate is for acreage in Auburn. Of course, a lot of it depends on if it's on a public way, if it's got access to infrastructure, if it's got access to town
Sure.
sewer, water,
Yeah.
electric, all that.
Well, the proposal to buy that land must have passed somebody's muster, right? The selectmen must have decided.
The selectmen decided yes,
Yes,
right.
so,
And I think the reason to buy it, and I'm just speaking for myself, nobody wants open space more than me, But I don't think I don't think we would have bought it if it wasn't a threat of that development.
again, it was the potential impact on that area, on the neighborhoods that I think drove a lot of people to vote for it. It just didn't seem appropriate to put a
Right.
100-unit apartment building in the meadow.
Well, it was more than 100 units. It was between the houses and
Well,
the...
yeah, so, and 70 houses or whatever the actual mix was. But I think that to say open space is, we have to realize that there's different categories of open space.
Right.
And that there's wildland, and that's great. But if you have let's say a bike trail going through an area that's allowed to reasonably grow or controlled growth, you're really not impacting on the wildness of it, except for that you've got a path that people can safely ride a bike on. And I think we have to think about stuff like that. Yes, that's passive recreation, but it's low impact. Or walking trails have almost no impact, unless if they're paved, and yes, you have to go in and do the work and that type of stuff. But if they're not paved, if they're, whatever surface that they're designed with, the impact is relatively small.
Now, you know what? You just brought up a question. I didn't even think to ask Mr. Bloomquist when he was here. You're right. The trails are going to require maintenance. Who's going to do that? How much time is that going to take?
If they're well used, they're not going to require a lot of maintenance. I mean, at least on the surface. I'm not saying that if you had, brush on either side that wanted to overgrow the trails, then yes, that might require maintenance to
Yeah.
do something like that.
Yep.
But I think in the relative term, well, that's a great Boy Scout project. It's a great volunteer project. It's a great thing to get people involved in supporting
Community
another
service.
nice space in Auburn. And it shouldn't all rest on the backbone of the Parks Department or whatever it's called now, Wayne.
I think in many towns, the people who use the trails form a group and they maintain them by
Right.
themselves.
And I think Mr. Miller from Arlington Street, he told us that too.
There's a group to take care of community service.
Yeah. So. I know there's been some arms raising out there. Does somebody have something they want to say?
I can stay right here.
Sure.
Kevin Maher, 4 Stonebridge Drive, Auburn. It seems like this committee has come together on a municipal application, very undefined. So, you could go to the Board of Selectmen and say, we're hearing walking trails, bike trails, Boy Scouts, and all that sort of stuff, and say, do your bonding, dedicate the land to municipal use, but in the next year or so, the Open Space Committee would like to come back with a detailed proposal. There's no way you can do that between now and the timetable you're on. You were given a god-awful timetable. So if they do make they lay across the land municipal application, they do their bonding and go on, but you ought to come in with a recommendation, you ought to come back with a detailed plan a year from now to put in possibly a dog track, a dog walking trail, a bike track,
Good thing you corrected
Casino.
this.
open space, because right now to sit here and say, okay, there's 49 acres, there's really 9 beautiful acres you may never want to touch, but you don't know that.
Right.
Or it may be 29 acres you don't want to ever touch, because you just can't competently say today that a percentage should be used for open space, but you're all saying low impact is what I'm hearing, once you're off the housing component. And getting to the housing component, my honest opinion is this, nobody's ever really looked at that in this town. And there's a lot more cost-effective areas that, could be looked at, and I think they're probably available, whether in private hands or in public hands. You got schools we don't know what they're doing with. I don't know if there's game plan on the schools yet. The 2 elementary schools we're closing. Do those afford enough space for housing? We already own it. Could we companion that on that same property if you do something else with the existing school structure? Could you do some elderly housing on those sites? Are there open spaces? I tried to look on the record today in town, there's a lot of property the town owns. A lot of it's junk property in terms of developable use, but it's beautiful open space.
Right.
So, and maybe there is somebody out there who consider giving town land and take a tax break sometime in the future, who knows? There's all sorts of things, but I think for this parcel, you could go in and say, we want to come back with it in a year, the detailed use. And our position today is to lay the municipal application on the site. That's just maybe something you consider doing.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just going to say, speaking for myself, one of us hasn't given up on the housing idea.
It makes two of us. We're not for that spot.
Just through
Oh,
the,
I think you need more housing in all day long. I think an entry fee to get there is $1.4 billion. That's a big entry fee.
I understand that, it's
That
just
is-
that,
It's just too much.
but no matter where you suggest housing, there's going to be objections.
well, through the chair,
Yeah.
the Elementary School Reuse and Disposition Advisory Group, just this past, a couple months ago, examined Julia Bancroft and Mary D. Stone schools,
Right.
and they made a recommendation to the town manager, based on public input from 2 public hearings, that there wasn't as much opposition to senior housing at either site. However, their
Right.
final recommendation was for
Julia Bancroft.
Town Hall
Yeah.
Annex
Yeah.
for Mary D. and Julia Bancroft for senior housing.
Right.
So there is, comparatively to this South Old Road property, a different parcel in town, that being Julia Bancroft, that may be more suitable for elderly housing than this.
But the thing that concerns, not to get into a housing discussion because this isn't the right forum, but the thing that concerns me about JB is it's old, and it's got asbestos in it, and it's going to cost a fortune to abate that.
Certainly, that's if they use that, building.
At the building, on the
Yeah.
open
Right.
field there.
There's a
Keep
lot
on
of
building back
space
Build
there.
a new one.
But they
Anybody
promised
looked
to,
at
they
that?
promised to keep that open, that space back there.
Oh, okay, I didn't know.
That's part of the recommendation of the town manager, but it is still the town manager's
That's
decision.
what the neighbors didn't want that. So, it's just a lot to think about.
But just to further, and I apologize, Mr. Colessa, based on what I'm hearing and through the chair from the members, I put stars next to 6 things of this list of 15. It was walking trails, biking trails, dog park, cemetery, open space forever, and disc golf were the only 6 that everyone seemed to have in common. All 6 are municipal uses, passive recreation, and kind of to support Mr. Maher's point, these are a municipal recommendation for bonding, in my opinion, and then there's a future plan that the committee can decide to recommend in the future. It's
Well,
just my
you know
opinion.
what, wouldn't you think, I mean, I'm just thinking out loud, if the committee's gonna go in that direction of recommending a half dozen municipal passive recreation uses, then why do we even bother having a year or 2? Why spend $80,000 for 2 years if all you wanna do is those 6 things? You might as well let them bond it for 10 years and do
Precisely.
nothing. You know?
I was recommending that you do bond for 10 years, but you asked for another year to come back with a detailed plan
Right, but
for
there's
the
really no-
property
there's really
to do
no
those
point.
things.
Yeah, but if you're
Sure.
gonna do these municipal things, then they can just bond it for the 10 years for a non-taxable bond for
Yeah, but
10
you may
years.
want to come back and say, see that 30 acres over there? You shouldn't touch this, selectman. Now, you as a committee get something in front of the selectmen and say, hey, don't touch that. That's good stuff.
I agree.
That's what you should, and you would have the year to make the use applications. So I'm not saying short-term bond.
Mr. Page?
Short-term bond for 1 or 2 years?
No,
No, because you're wasting $80,000, I
Do a
think.
permanent bond, is what I'm
Permanent.
saying. Make it municipal, and you come back and tell them what you think you should do during the next year.
What we think the municipal uses should be?
Yeah.
That's a big, wide open area for you.
That's all right, no problem.
I'm listening.
I'm here to listen too. I just want to back up a little bit on this, the housing. I do agree that that is not really the best place to put it. But I want to let you know, and the residents of this town, I'm chairman of the Auburn Housing. I'm only one person. We have a board that are working together to do what we can. The elderly, the handicapped, families, to do with housing. South Hall Road is not the only one, and as far as Julia Bancroft, I heard a lot of very, very favorable people talking about going there. But we gotta remember, this is not an argument on whether the housing authority is gonna do this or do that. We're here to work with anybody, any place, anytime to get housing in, and we do not want this to run into a problem with South Hole Road. South Hole Road is you have Bible discussions with residents, committees, people involved, neighbors. Let it be that. But please, don't start issues with the housing when the housing is trying to put their best foot forward to make it for our residents and the people that we need to help. We are always going to work for the people in town and the people in need for emergencies, the handicap. That's what we're here for. But please, don't let this disrupt your decisions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Wayne.
And I just want to make one comment as a member of the Housing Authority. First of all, we did vote on pursuing the JV property, but that's all. You know, and my feeling is, why limit ourselves? Why not keep the options open? Why can't we do both? And the other thing to remember is that housing doesn't have to be through the Auburn Housing Authority. It can be with a private management company, like the elderly housing, the Federal 202 program up in the North American Martyrs Church. So there's lots of options. There's lots of things to consider. So, anyways, go ahead.
I agree there's a lot of openings and decisions to be made, but I think as far as that issue goes, that needs to be resolved through the Housing Committee as a committee, not just one member.
Was there any other public comment? Yes.
Chuck Miller, 34 Arlington Street. I just want to say I really liked what I heard tonight about the passive recreation uses, and I'm glad you feel that way. Thing I wanted to point out too is it used to be, and I don't know if it's still true, that Precinct 3 in Auburn was the most populous precinct. I think that's still true. That's where South Old Road is located. So parking isn't going to be an issue. I don't see someone living on Packagug Street putting their bike in the car, driving to South Old Road, taking the bike out of the car. You're going to ride your bike there. Same with the walking trail, same with the dog park. If you live in that area, you're probably going to walk there to use the facility or walk the dog there to tire him out. But thank you. I like what I heard tonight.
Is there any other comment from anyone? No? All right. So we're down to 6 uses, it sounds like. I guess, I know we're not following the agenda really, but the selectmen continued their public hearing until July 27th, which I don't really know why, but we're supposed to make a recommendation by July 27th. That's 2 weeks from today. We've had 5 meetings in the last 6 weeks. And I guess what I'm looking to the committee for is your thoughts on, do you feel that you want to make a recommendation now? Are you done? You know, is there any point in having another meeting on this topic? You know, do you want to hand your recommendation to the selectmen and they can have it for their discussion at their public hearing on July 27th? What you feel?
Are they individual recommendations or are they committee recommendations?
Well, the committee needs to make a recommendation to the selectmen by July 27th. But they went ahead and continued their public hearing until July 27th. But, you know, it's kind of hard to participate in a public hearing and listen to the same stuff and then, you know, try to make a decision on what you're going to recommend to them. They have to have a recommendation by the 27th.
Do the individual members have a vote? We do, right?
We have a vote on the committee, right.
And then the vote is offered up to you? And then
To me,
you
no.
summarize them?
No. You guys are gonna, if 4 of you vote, or 3 of you vote, or whatever you do, if you vote, if the committee takes a vote, and the majority of the committee says, bond it for 10 years, municipal use, passive recreation, then there'll be a letter typed up to the selectmen saying, This is our recommendation.
Why don't we,
So that would come in the form of a motion from a member for the committee to vote on.
we could meet next week, and during the week, each individual member could write down his own 3 uses, then offer them up the next week, and then you would take them, read them, collate them, and recommend them, unless you want to take a vote now, tonight.
I'm asking.
We don't have to come up with uses for it.
No.
All we have to do is recommend to the selectmen whether to keep it in the municipal bond or a private.
Well, you have to give them some idea, because depending on if it's going to be just open space sitting there, the value is going to be different than if you're going to turn it into something else.
But do we have to give them like a certain amount, like 15 acres to one thing, or?
No,
No.
If,
If you were going to have,
If you want.
if you wanted to give part of it up for, and I'm not saying we're going to do this, but
Okay.
if, say that subdivision that was permitted,
Yeah,
just for the sake of discussion, say you wanted to market that subdivision and sell that off, if that was your recommendation, that has a certain value to it. That would be totally different in value than open space. So they'd have to have a real estate appraiser come in and establish a value on that. And I honestly don't know how many acres that takes up. It's not a real big, it's not a ton. But say it's 10 acres, just for the sake of argument. Then someone would come in and say, for that 10 acres, if you're recommending to sell out those house lots, that would be worth X amount of money. They're gonna bond that at a taxable rate versus the rest of it for open space. But if you're gonna come in and say all municipal use, passive recreation, then I think they're just gonna bond it as a one bond, wouldn't they?
right.
And it would be a non-taxable bond.
And you pay higher interest, or you end up paying more for it over the taxable one versus the non-taxable.
Right. And I would think if you bond for a 10-year term,
Right.
you're probably gonna get, a better rate than a short term.
You pay about $200,000 more if you're doing a private use or a taxable
Right.
bond, non-municipal.
But a long-term bond, I would think the short-term borrowing for, like, if we extended it for a year or two, I think that the borrowing rate would be higher, I think.
That's what most believe.
Yeah.
So, to answer the question, it's more committee members be looking to formulate a motion over the next week to present to the committee, if that's what you desire. You'd be, in this, again, is a complete example, to make a motion to recommend 32 acres for municipal and 15 for non-municipal. Or you're looking at, I'd like to make a motion to recommend 100% municipal bonds for Board of Selectmen, and then someone would second, and the committee would vote. So it's your choice, whatever motion you're looking to do. Maybe it's best for the committee to come up with their own motion ideas and present them at the next meeting.
And you could also say for municipal use, if we're suggesting these six things that we heard: hiking trails, biking trails, walking trails, dog park.
We could do that now, or we could do that at
Yep.
some future date.
Okay.
Correct.
Or do it now?
Can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
Why don't you, as a committee, because I don't want to see,
go to the mic, please.
I happen to think this committee is in tune more to use of that property than, let's say, the selectmen. I don't mean anything disrespectful, they have a lot on their plate, they have meetings. That's why I think you might want to consider, this is my opinion, in listening to all you here, that the selectmen, number one, on the site for the long term, 10 years. 2, we are looking at 6 or 7 different uses now on the municipal side, labeled passive recreation. And 3, we would like to come back to the selectmen within a year with a detailed proposal of what uses they actually put in there. It's simple as that. That way you've got your flexibility, you're saying it's passive recreation, and you've laid the whole land as municipal. If you want to start breaking off parcels of land right now for non-municipal, you're opening a whole can of worms, I think. So those 3 points, and that gives you all the control in the future. The selectmen would probably want you to do the job, because they don't want to do it, to come back with a detailed use plan for passive recreation on the site, trails or whatever. So that's simple. It gives you all the control too.
But I would just point out that they already have a $15,000 grant to explore the feasibility of putting trails in, and I don't think they're gonna wait the year.
Well,
to
that,
tell them to put trails.
through the chair, that wouldn't wait anyways. The passive recreation is a low impact for the walking trail anyway, so that wouldn't affect the bond, whether they put it out for a year or not.
Right, but it seems from what I've heard, it sounds as though the trails are going to go forward anyway.
Yes.
So who's going to draft those proposals that we're going to vote on this week or next week? Who's going to do that?
Once the committee votes through the chair, I would make the draft of whatever the committee decides.
It's a simple,
Oh, you sounded good, it sounded good. I mean, can you repeat what you just said?
I don't believe I can make a motion. I'm not a voting
You
member.
can't
No, I mean, can you repeat what you just said so that we could refresh our memory?
I can put it on paper for you folks to review, unless you want to do that today.
do you want to
sounds good.
do you want to mull it over for one more week? I mean, I don't want to wait. I really wanted us to make a decision tonight.
Okay.
But if you want to wait till next week, fine. But I don't want to wait until July 27th to go to the selectmen's meeting with nothing prepared. You know, I want us to make a decision before we go there. Because out of all these uses, you're all telling me the majority of the committee wants these half dozen passive rec uses. You
Absolutely.
want to bond it for 10 years.
Right.
So is there really any, I mean, I can't imagine that anyone's going to come forward at the selectmen's meeting on the 27th and come up with anything other than what we've already got on here.
Right.
So I personally don't see the point in waiting until their public hearing on the 27th.
Okay.
I think if you want to take another week and you want to have meeting number 6 out of 7 weeks, you want to have another meeting next Monday, fine. But I'd like us to make a decision then.
I agree.
I have an idea, Madam Chair.
Yep.
Based on what I've heard today, would it be all right for the committee if I were to put together a draft motion for them to consider at their next meeting, based on information gathered today and from the public today?
Well, could we do it tonight?
We could. I'd like to make sure it was perfect after reviewing the
We
minutes.
could adjourn for 15 minutes while you write it?
To review the tape.
I think if you put
It's
pressure on.
8:20. If you don't want to make a decision tonight, I just as soon wait a week. You
This
know,
gives me
you
a
can
chance
draft
to review the
motion. I
meeting.
mean, I don't think it's a big deal. It's a motion. It's not, I could sit here and say, I can't make a motion, but
That would-
Could I just clarify something? If we make the motion to bond it for 10 years as municipal land, that can't be reversed in that 10 years' time.
No.
That's correct.
You can't reverse any part of that to
you're not
change.
going to be able to, in 5 years, you're not going to say, well, I want
That's
to
right.
have 5 acres for,
Okay.
I don't know,
I just
something.
wanted to
No.
make sure that that was clear.
I thought you could do it, but
pay
we're-
off- I thought you could pay off in 8 years.
You could, if it has a callable provision, but he said to exercise the callable provision in 8 years is extremely costly.
Right.
And he didn't recommend doing it. I don't know what extremely costly means, but he definitely was not in favor of it.
But in 10 years, you could sell it, use it whatever you want.
Right, after it's paid
After
for.
it's paid off.
Yep, at that end of that bonding period.
You know, I find it's a real simple thing, man. I know you talk about having it right, but these guys are all, I think, have an opinion.
Sure.
I'll take a stab at it. I make a motion that the Open Space Committee recommend to the Board of Selectmen that the property on South Hole Road, 49.x acres,
Yep.
be municipally bonded for 10 years, and that the use of the property be for passive recreation or other municipal uses during that period.
period.
Wait a minute. I'm trying to write since I got to do the minutes. Is there a second for discussion?
Second,
When you say other municipal uses, what do you mean?
Let's say that the town was given access off of Route 20. Okay, and there was a need for something else, whether that's a cemetery or if there was a need to put a hockey rink there that's a municipal project, that would open up to me the possibility of something like that. Without that access, I just don't see it possible. That's all I'm saying. And again, I don't want to close doors here. I want to keep it open, but our obvious intent of this is for passive recreation. My intent, anyway.
Why don't we just put in parentheses those 6 things that we talked about?
Because there might be something else, too.
Well, no, it'd have to be someplace, they'd have to go someplace else.
Madam Chair, would the committee be interested to consider the ability to make a educated recommendation to the Board of Selectmen within a year's time, as Mr. Maher mentioned? Is possible
On
amendment to that motion?
specific passive recreation uses?
Sure.
Would that be added to the motion, or?
That's the information. I just wanted to raise that so you could consider it for your motion, if possible.
I personally don't like the "or other municipal uses." I can just see that thing getting developed into something.
And again, Madam Chair, that we don't have to recommend the use at this time.
And you gotta remember, we're only advisory. They could sell it tomorrow to do, you know.
No, I
who knows?
understand.
When they have to go to town meeting, to the town meeting
I don't
authorize
know.
the money part?
So where would you like the period?
This is, I kind of
For
want to
pack-
one time to write it out.
Passive recreation uses or any other municipal use, that's what you said.
Okay, well, okay, I will,
Passive uses, period?
I'm fine with that.
All right.
Because it's a recommendation, it's not an order of law. So, again, other things can happen. We're making a recommendation right now, and I'm very happy to say passive recreation.
Okay. Do you want to say such as the 6 things? Or do you want to leave it open?
I think
Or
just-
do you-
I think we just leave it open.
Okay. Do you want to say anything to them about you'd like to come back in a year with some suggested uses, or do you just want to leave it be?
I think as part of this motion, I don't think it's necessary to
Okay.
say what we're going to do.
Okay. All right, so Mr. Benoit seconded the motion. Did you have a comment?
No, I was just going to say, we might want to mention these things before a year, not necessarily wait and come back in a year, whether we may want to be able to talk about them before a year goes by.
Well, you're already saying for passive,
yes,
municipal,
yeah.
keep it all for municipal
Right.
use with passive recreation
So I don't think it's...
uses. You could come back in 6 months and say, you know what, we've been mulling over the passive recreation uses. These are some things that we
Right.
suggest.
Yeah, yeah.
Would we
That's
have a
why I said we
legitimate
don't
reason
even-
to do that? I mean, we're not boxing ourselves out of it with this proposal?
I don't think so. We're the Open Space Committee. As I understand our charge, although I haven't seen anything in writing, we're supposed to be looking at the town-owned parcels of property to decide what, if anything, should be done with them. Should we, are they small, little, tiny tracts of land that you can't use for anything? Do you want to sell them to someone else? Do you want to turn another one into housing, maybe? Or something else? Or do you want to do nothing? That's what we're supposed to be doing. I don't want to spend a whole year on deciding on South Old Road. We got plenty of other town-owned parcels to be looking at.
Do we have a second on that motion?
Mr. Benoit seconded it. Is there any other discussion on the motion? No? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's a vote. So I will work with Mr. Benoit to come up with a letter to the selectmen.
We'll put the draft together.
Can I make one more suggestion?
We can.
Sorry. Would you want to get this back someday to have some influence on how whatever they do with it? I don't know, I mean, how it is developed in the passive recreation format, or are you letting the selectmen handle that?
I think Ann said we could offer our opinions. and
You
you-
might want to make a motion that we would like to report back within a year, it could be 6 months, 90 days, but up to 12 months.
Well, I asked
A
Mr.
recommended
Anderson if he
vote.
wanted to amend his motion to that effect, and he said no.
It could still be
Well,
done.
no, but you could
You
do
could
it
have
as a
an-
separate motion just on that one issue, that we would like to come back, the open space committee within the year. So if you want to take it on.
Isn't that part of what we're here for anyway, is over time, when this comes up for discussion, that we can make our recommendations?
Through the chair.
I think so.
Through the chair,
I
yeah.
think
Yes,
so, too.
yes and no. Certainly that is within our responsibility as a committee, but if you give us a timeline, or at least a window to get this done, it'll give us more priority to focus on it, rather than get distracted by anything else that's thrown our way. So it's, in my opinion, not a bad idea.
Do you want to have another motion to add something to this letter saying that, you know, the Open Space Committee would like the opportunity to
Recommend.
present you with passive recreation use ideas at a future time?
So moved?
I'll second that.
You seconded it, Louise? Does this thing have a limit on time?
Nope, it's got
No.
67 hours.
Because it flashed a while ago.
Should be all right.
Okay. All right, so there's a motion by Mr. Anderson and a second by Mrs. Downey. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So voted. All right, so we'll work on that.
I'll work on it.
Okay. So we do...
Thank you, by the way. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we don't need to meet next week.
I got a question.
I can attend the selectmen's meeting on the 27th
I'll be there as
in
well.
case they have any issues. You can, you know, if you all want to come, I need to post it. If there's going to be more than 3 of us, if there's going to be 3 of us there, I need to, we could just post it to
Just post
protect
it,
ourselves.
that's fine.
Yeah, we'll post it.
Mark had a question.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
If you put, would there be 2 different trails, like one for walking only and then one for
That I
biking?
don't know, because I wouldn't think you'd want bikers on the same trail
Yeah,
as
'cause
They
walkers.
often,
You
they
walk a
often
while.
do that, though.
We have an expert here.
the problem is you're walking by, you get hit by a bike.
Use the bike trail.
Do you want me to go up to the...
Yes.
That would be nice.
It is still in its feasibility study phase, so
I've been
we're not
places
sure
where
what
they
we
do
can...
both on the same trail.
Right.
What happens is, it's really a misnomer to call it a bike trail. It's a multi-purpose trail. People are there on rollerblades, cross-country skis that have roller skates on them, bicycles, walkers, strollers, everybody kind of coexists on the trail. So if it's paved, it's one trail. It's usually not tremendously wide, but it's wide enough where you can pass. And there's rules associated with it, you know, and you don't run anyone over with your bicycle is rule number 1.
I think with me, I'd want 2 different trails.
It's quite possible that may happen, given the terrain and what we're looking at. If there was, I mean, there's 2 variables here. The connection to the Pappas land, and that's a lot of upland and wetlands areas, and you're certainly not going to be paving that. And then there's the possibility for future connection to Route 20 that would connect the Blackstone River Bikeway. And if that were the case, there's a possibility that somewhere on South Hall Road was the end of that bikeway, and you had a sign with a stoppage in a parking area. Again, all feasible, all ideas, all conceptual, and that's being examined with the survey, the wetland delineation, and then the design done by the town engineer.
So our next open spaces meeting will be the end of September or the beginning of October?
No, we're going to be meeting the first and third Mondays of the month on a regular basis.
Okay. I
We've
just
only
thought
been
we-
meeting every single week because of the time constraints.
I thought we were going to have a summer vacation. No?
We have next week.
No summer vacation.
Next week, pack your bags.
So we're going back to the normal,
Yeah.
when?
The
in
first and third
August?
Mondays. In
August?
August, yeah.
All right.
But we will post for July 27th
Yes.
in case the majority of us happens to be there, so that we're not in violation of the open meeting law or anything. So we will do that.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So voted. Okay.